Welcome back to Suladan Plays Dark Souls 3. This time, I'm not looking forward to it, but I have to fight Freide. Sister Freide. In any case, that requires me to go to Ariandel Chapel. And I was wrong about how you start the fight, which is good for me. I thought you had... Excuse you. Toll-free call. No. No. Anyway. I thought you had to fight her in this little tiny room where you meet her. Which would have been awful. Because I know it's a multi-phase boss fight. If I had to fight her in here, I would be very upset. But I also thought that I had to walk up to her and attack her.
Leave a sweeper thought.
Also, she's evil, you know, just in case you forgot. There is something else I want to do, also. Go ahead and put the chill blood, the icy protective ring of iceness, and see if I have anything with really good ice resistance. That's not heavy. Yeah. Anyway. Excuse me. Do shields have ice? No. Okay, so ice is not a damage type. That's good. Spawn at the chapel. Go down the stairs into the crypt. There's a ladder I didn't know about. Maybe this is what they mean by stairs. I mean, ladders are stairs, right? They're just vertical stairs. Oh, this is a pretty attic. Oh, this is probably where Ariandel goes when you beat Freide, so let's not do that. And I'm embered right now, which is nice. As long as nobody invades me. I'm busy. No. Door? Door? Nope. Lever? Nope. Huh. 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 So I think I've got to do something to open that door. Okay, so apparently the crypt is an area that I haven't... Oh, speaking of which, I'm going to finish this thought first, but there's another thought following. And another. The crypt is apparently an area that we haven't gotten to yet, and it says, like, if you don't have the shortcut open, go to the Snowy Pass bonfire. Secondly, I remember that there is the... that was a weird graphical effect. There's the fiery lake and lightning centipede worm thing that I forgot about from way far back. I am going to have to revisit some of the earlier things in Dark Souls 3 when I finish the DLCs, because I know there are some optional areas that I have whoopsed into missing. Okay, it says go up the hill to the giant bell. You goobers. No. 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 Hi. Hello. No. Bang. No. How many weird random ice Vikings are there? Get down here. Get down here. Thank you. I miss my bone fist. And the, you know, thing I love from Dark Souls 1, the ability to kick enemies off of ledges. Oh, panic roll. Roll away. No. No. No to you too. No. Okay. Now that all of y'all have been noped, I'm looking for a bell. There's the bell. Go that way. There's too many of them. Why are there so many of them? Ooh. You're dead. Come on. Get over here. How do I have full Estises again? These are important questions, you know. I'm not sure. I know I used Estises and then I had full Estises again. Anyway, that gets rid of some of them. Ow. I mean, nice aim you've got there. That would have been lethal. Why are there so many of them? Come on, fellas. What? Why? I just got rid of the third flame goober. I didn't ask for another one. Which does bring up a very interesting point that I wanted to bring up in a previous episode. Well, there's multiple points I wanted to bring up. One, for all my grumping, the Slave Knight Gale fight is beautifully executed, aside from I still think he has too much health for a new game, the standard new game boss. One moment. But the fight itself, I adore. I love the way that it builds on itself, that each phase he's using the same attacks just with new twists on them. And the fight is glorious, the area is beautiful, I love the lightning, I love all of it, except I feel like he has too much health. I feel like I had to rely on the poison as a gimmick, just because he had too much health. But that's just me. Overall, though, I wanted to make clear that I did enjoy the fight. I mean, I love the design, and I would love to fight him again. He's just got too much health. But kind of like these guys, they don't bother me as much. I mean, they're a unique concept, but if suddenly they took 20 hits each to kill, with the same weapon, same setup, same everything, it would make them more annoying. Something else I was going to say that was going to lead into that. Oh well. I forgot. Okay, go to the bell. Turn left. When you hit the cliff, turn right, then immediately turn right again. I have turned right. If I immediately turn right again, then I end up in a hole. This hole leads me nowhere. You know, part of the problem is that your definition of when you go up the hill to the giant bell and turn right is somewhat vague. Oh yeah, I remember one way leads me here. It says I'm looking for a cliff and a path up the mountain. Past Millwood Nights. I'm gonna assume that's him. Well, that makes me sad right there. That is a beautiful plant. How do I get over there? Something died. I really want to jump and kill him. I don't know how I'm not being hit by his attacks, but I'm going to take it. A large titanite shard. Too bad I have plenty of them. Well, I may have just messed myself over. Maybe stuck on a path that doesn't lead to where I need it to be. Nope, okay, it loops back around. Okay, that's not where I need it. No. Just no. Surely you don't mean down there. I don't know what shenaniganry is going on with that. I'm gonna spend the whole episode trying to find Freide. I don't know whether to be happy about that. I see you, Mr. Fire. I mean, are those Millwood Nights? Because if so, then that means that's where I need to go. I mean, you also have the problem of what is the definition of turn right and immediately turn right again? Because that sounds like turn around. Assuming that you're following the standard of each turn being roughly 90 degrees... Unless you're trying to tell me to go left, in which case here's a cave. That leads to death. Earthseeker. How are the... I'm in a building! I mean, not in a building, I'm in a cave. It says I'm looking for a cave entrance. Okay. Maybe when it said when you reach the cliff it means over here? Turn right, then turn right again. Leads me to here. Is that the special attack of that axe? This is one of those examples of where vague directions get people lost. Because without giving me any clarity on where you're considering to be at the bell, because I can approach the bell from multiple angles, so when you say when I'm at the bell turn left, okay, I assume what it means is you'd be walking up from this path. Doot 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 doot. Look, bell, turn left. When you hit the cliff, turn right. Then immediately right again. Follow the path up the mountain, past the Millwood Knights, and you'll see a cave. When you enter it, you're in the crypt. Who shot that? I don't want one. I see you up there. See, my theory is that it has to do with that tree over there. I mean, it wouldn't be the first time there's been you kick a tree down to open a passageway, but... how do I... I see you up there. Thank you, Backstep. See, how do I get up there? This aggravates me gravely. See, I think I'm supposed to go across there and look cave. But the tree isn't down, so how do I feel like videos have made guide writers become lazy. Like, used to people would put really good direction. This isn't the only game lately I've been having this issue with, where the guides are just incredibly vaguely written. Oh look, roofs. I have found roofs. Shoe roofs. Ow. I don't want to mess with you. Left me no choice. Wait, was that an item? Nope. Okay. I bypassed my shields. Stop. Oh, great. Ludwig, you better be an NPC. I'm concerned because there's potentially an invader roaming around, and I don't know for 100% certain if it's a person. Forgot you could do that. Yeah. On the the bright side, it gets rid of the stupid embered state, so I don't have to worry about whether it's an NPC or not anymore. In concept, the invasion system is neat, but in practice, I've just never been a huge... I'm dealing with y'all. I did not... Why do you keep selecting fire bombs, you idiot? Like, legitimately, he keeps swapping the fire bombs without me telling him. But what I mean by that is, especially in Dark Souls 3, the PvP took a big downward hit because it's so much about just who can spam roll the longest and who can catch the other person in their rolling. Just to me... Okay. The Dark Souls 3 PvP is just... conceptually, Dark Souls, to me, has always had problems with its PvP in some form or another. Partly to do with the fact that people will just figure out what works best and go with it. But also because I feel like the Dark Souls games haven't really had the best luck balancing their weapon viability. Weapon and armor style viability. Dark Souls 1, you had the problem of you could have people wearing the tankiest armor rolling around like mad fools, due to the fact that, logically speaking, you need more stamina to carry more armor to do. Well, the fact that encumbrance and stamina were both tied to the same stat led to some issues, combined with some equipment setups dealing with the Havel set. In theory, what you want in the game is for there to be a trade-off between different play styles. The fast, slow, armorless character, weaving around, the tanky character, trading something for that tankiness. But it's hard to... Why target lock? He never left my screen. And, you just did a 180 mid-swing. Balancing a game for both PvE and PvP, to me, is one of the biggest things that makes it difficult for them. And it's one reason I generally defend the idea of having a separate scaling system for PvP and PvE. Because sometimes you have to nerf something that's being abused in PvP, but in doing so, it makes it almost, a lot less useful in PvE. Player versus environment versus player, I mean. I use the word versus way too many times there. Case in point, they nerfed the miracles a bunch of times in Dark Souls 3 from what I've heard. And in doing so, it kind of made them a lot less useful. But they had abuse cases. I haven't played Dark Souls 3 long enough, nor do I have enough experience with miracle play to, to offer any kind of full analysis to that detail. I just know I've, heard bits and pieces. Will you stop with the stupid arrows? I am busy. Because there's the tree. You can't. There we go. Kick the tree. Look, a shortcut. That's what we were trying to get to. With this cave being the crypt. The directions I was given were horrible. Horrible, I say. I'm hearing a number of interesting sounds. I had to just pause and appreciate that. And I thought those were basilisks, but it's just those flies. Yeah, the flies are supposed to signify that the painted world is rotting. Apparently, and I had to read a little bit on the wiki for this, Ariandel sought to paint a world free from the cycle of fire, to create a new world where people could escape to, where they could, you know, escape the cycle of fire, the undead, curse, and all that stuff. And she sends Slave Nigel to get the pigment of Pygmy's blood, or the blood of the Dark Soul. When Gale finally located it, all the Pygmies had long died, their blood had dried up, which I kind of have to question, because generally pigment is dried up. You add moisture to it to undry it. But I'm not going to question that right now. It could have, you know, dried up and turned to dust for all I know. You know, you give something long enough, it can lose its ability to use its pigment. And that's where Gale absorbed the Dark Soul himself and was driven mad, and that's where we end up finding him in a long distant future. But the flies and all represent that the world that she painted has begun to decay. And I think her hope is that if she paints a world with the blood of the Dark Soul, that she could avoid that cycle of decay. I don't know. But yeah, it all ties into that in one way or another. Are you friendly? Okay. Thank you. Why did I come here? Oh no. No, no, you were my friend. Okay, wow. Yeah, the flies are just down here eating the decay. Ow. I was being peaceful to you. Oh great, I've got maggots now. Yeah, I'm dead. Oh, because they're attracted to the decay, I get it. I'll give credit that that's clever, having them flock to whatever's been maggot infested. I mean, it's creepy also. I mean, maggots are technically just infant flies. Well, infant is really being stretched at that point. They're larval flies. Given that they follow a very different biological system than we do, the term infant just doesn't work there. They follow a life cycle of, you know, larva, pupa, adult. They're like caterpillars. You know, many of the basic bug Pokemon that do the thing. Too many Vikings. It's not a sentence I use very often, but too many Vikings. And I don't have to worry about it because I got a tree over here. But I thought it was neat that a number of the flies were seemingly docile, but the moment I got infested with the maggots, they all started just becoming aggro. Which is annoying. But creative. Well, two-handing that was pointless. There you go, you're all dead. You know what? You're gonna die too. Just because. What I would have needed to do would be pop an Estus real quick, and then pull out the torch to get rid of the blood loss. But I was unable to do so because of the sheer number of them that were after me. I think they're legitimately just programmed to bum rush you like that. Back off. It would help if the menu would open. There we go. Got the torch. Be on fire. And you die just by association. I ain't dealing with your nonsense. Also, it biologically doesn't make sense that they would spit their larva at me. Unless that's just to say that their larva is infesting the stuff that they're eating and they just happen to have a mouthful of it, but flies generally don't have mouths like that. They do the whole, spitting out acid. Oh look, your larva fell off. Oh look, they fell off again. I got better things to do than get stuck in an infinite loop of you trying to lay eggs. Yeah. I still have an issue with the way the Dark Souls codes its grab attacks. Like, my claws should have dealt damage to him, because he grabbed onto me while my claws were... Okay, this is really just getting annoying. Oh, for heaven's sake, this is not interactive. This is just, oh, they're gonna spam grab attacks forever. Look, no more maggots. It's enough. Goodness. Again, this is to... I think you coming down here is meant to drive the point home that all is not as well as Freide makes it out to be, that this world is rotting. You stop with that! Oh, that is so spamish! Don't spam grab attacks. It is can't say never. I have yet to see a game that can properly implement that in such a way that it is not just aggravating. I guess it would depend on how your grab attacks are coded and whether players can, you know, get loose from them. But it is not fun having your control repeatedly just pulled away from you so that you can watch the same animation play over and over and over and over and over. It's not interesting, nor is it interactive. It is frustrating. I'm not calling the fly enemies, you know, badly designed, and I'm not calling them hard. I'm just saying that having them in mass spam a grab attack is not well designed in of itself. Having any enemy just spam a grab attack endlessly. And the reason it's happening is because there's so many of them. Like, in small numbers, it's never been a problem until now. Unless there's a caveat there in that maybe these are the only ones capable of that grab attack, but I don't know. I am about to pull out... Oh, I'd love to use that thing. Oh, someday, if it wasn't so heavy. All the fun stuff is so heavy. Where's my butcher's knife? Butcher blade. There you are. Move! Get off my screen. Just doing this so I can wipe out whole groups at a time. They take critical damage if you hit them while they're in flight. Anyway. You know, on that topic, to me, that is what sorry, not that topic. A topic I mentioned earlier about the different PvP styles in each of the three games. Each of the three games also had different methods of dealing with poise and the like. A lot of people don't like... Well, there's people on both sides of this fence. I'm gonna go with that. I think Dark Souls 1 had the closest to a reliable's not the word I'm looking for. A reasonable poise system in that you know, it allowed you to swing your big, slow, heavy weapon without being staggered by the slightest pinprick. Now, there were abuse cases, and what I think should have been done would be maybe have different weapons have different poise scaling on them so that the people wielding daggers don't get to have the same amount of poise as people dealing a great club. But what Dark Souls 3 does with it is just have poise completely deactivated unless you're two-handing and using a heavy swing on certain weapons. If what I've read on the matter is accurate, is that the hyperframes are only active during those specific two-hand R2s. To which I say, how often is that going to make poise useful? Now, it may just be me, I almost never use the R2 attack on weapons, outside of certain instances depending on what weapon I'm using. This is just so boring. You know, if it was a matter of keep the torch out and it won't try to do that, it would be a whole other story, but this is just ludicrous. I get it, swarm of flies. Yeah, all of these things are well executed except for the spammability of that grab attack. That's the part that aggravates me. Because I really do want to enjoy this area. Thematically, I love the idea that this is showing that the painted world is rotting. I just am sick of that spammed grab. Grab attacks are best enjoyed sparingly. Because you're taking control away from the player, and you don't want them to, you know, just get to where they're just stuck watching an animation. You die. I don't care. You know, I was gonna be nice to the ones that aren't aggroed to me, but I don't know. No, none of y'all get to live. Your entire race is being wiped out. Ooh. Case in point. And see, had I not... that... I did not ask for firebomb. Stop spamming fire... randomly firebombing. Yay, this is so interactive. Stop spamming that stupid grab attack. When you take control away from players, it just generally rubs play... oh dear, was I not supposed to do this? I thought this opened the shortcut. This better open something. That's not what I wanted opened. She's realized that I haven't left. Or is realizing I haven't left. Oh, that must be the shortcut. You built the place? No, I guess it would have a crypt under it.
As ashes will be, ever seeking fire.
Dude, your world is rotting, and you're grumping at me? I really want to enjoy this area, but the spam... The problem with grab attacks generally is that it's not so much about you can't hit them out of it, because if your hitbox comes into contact with a grab attack, you are grabbed. It was generally used in Dark Souls 1 and 2. 2 is where it's really coming to mind, for impale attacks with swords, which were to basically punish people that turtled under a shield constantly, by giving bosses the ability to have some attacks that you couldn't block, which was really interesting. My issue with them is at times you could get clipped by it, like when you're rolling, and like there's some fun little images on the internet of somebody, they're rolling out of the way of the pursuer, and his sword clips the heel of their foot, and they just suddenly teleport up onto his sword. Because that's how grab attacks are coded. If the hitboxes intersect, the grab was successful. And, you know, then you're pulled into the animation that then follows. Okay, so coming down here, the whole point was apparently to turn that wheel. My concern with grab attacks is that, you know, case in point, if I swing my sword, if the grab intersects with my sword, I don't know how it works in Dark Souls 3 specifically, but I know Dark Souls 2, well, your weapon hitbox is sometimes separate, but basically it's annoying when you're mid-swing, and if you and an enemy collide, I'd be fine with it if they took damage and the grab was successful, but more often than not, you just see the damage nullified and the grab was successful. And in the case of the flies, it's due to the frequency of them using it, due to their numbers. If you knew that you were going to put them in an area where there's a large number of the flies, creatively speaking, my recommendation would have been to lower the frequency of them using the attack to compensate for their large numbers. But that's just me. Did that thing just buzz at me? Although I'm having trouble seeing, I'm glad I have the torch. The torch does bring up an interesting concept. Originally, Dark Souls 2 was meant to be much darker. And by darker, I don't mean like dark and gritty. I mean darker in terms of lighting. In the original, or can't really say original, in earlier designs of the game, the torch was going to play a much bigger role, with No Man's Wharf being the test bed for that idea. The entire game was going to be based around it, where you clear out an area of enemies, you go back to the bonfire, you light the torch, and then you'd go light the sconces through the area to increase the light. Light and darkness was going to play a bigger part, but players found it frustrating. So it was tuned back. For some reason, the torch remains in the state where, you know, you have a limited amount of torch, and I don't really... That's a leftover from that, but I don't get what it adds to the current state of the game. But yeah, No Man's Wharf was... That's why No Man's Wharf has such a big emphasis on the light and darkness, and there's torch sconces everywhere you've got a light, is because it's, you know, because of that. There is that door. And now I'm going to talk to her, and she's probably going to be grumpy.
Leave us be, Ashen One. Sweep all thought of us.
Oh, well, you're saying the same thing you always have.
I see flame. Flame flickering once again. Not enough blood yet shed. My flail. Bring me my flail. Ah, Freide. What stops thine ears? Please, my flail, right away.
Okay, first thing I'm going to do, unequip that, unequip that. I'm going to put my cestus back on. It's really lightweight anyway. Bravery required. Yeah, there's a reason that the Freide fight is won. Just in trying to find out how to get to her. The sheer number of posts that were made that were basically... People have a very love-hate relationship with the Freide fight. I'm going to just leave it at that. I'm going to go farm for enough souls to go ahead and level up so that I can get rid of the 45,000 I'm carrying, but I'm not going to go into a boss fight with almost enough to level up. when I know there's a place that I can easily make for the difference. Then I'm going to make an attempt at Freide. But I'm probably not going to end up beating her today, just for time reasons. I had no idea it was going to take that long to find her. I didn't even know there was a crypt area. I mean, that was all news to me. I'd have never found it. Also, oh, now I remember the thing I was going to mention. Okay, back when I mentioned Slave Knight Gale and the fact that I like to fight, the other thing I was going to mention. I guess you're going to... Well, I'll mention it when we get back. Well, no, I can mention it now. It's going to take the same amount of time either way. The fact that there is... The area with the angels is Earthen Peak Ruins. That's Dark Souls 2, the Earthen Peak. The thing about that bothers me... I mean, this area right here, this is supposed to be, you know, Dark Souls 2, Earthen Peak. There's so much that could have been done with that. Why did you not include enemies that would have been reminiscent of Earthen Peak? The area doesn't look like Earthen Peak. It doesn't feel like Earthen Peak. Now, I will say that the bits of architecture that have fallen and collapsed that I was hiding in from the angels do look like they could have been pieces of the windmill from Earthen Peak. But it seems to me like a vastly missed opportunity that they could have put enemies that would have been reminiscent of or callbacks to Earthen Peak from Dark Souls 2. It just seems to me peculiar that you would go to the effort of including the Earthen Peak, but then not have enemies in it that are themselves reminiscent of Earthen Peak. The angels and all just didn't really fit the theme of Earthen Peak. Close the dang menu, you idiot! I'm sitting here hitting the start button, endless. Great, I've got one game where you can't open the menu when you're fighting, and another game that doesn't want to close the menu. That's not a game restriction. That was just a controller with the game or Steam being weird. But yeah, the Earthen Peak thing seemed weird to me. I just got to thinking about it one day, and it's like, if that's Earthen Peak, like, I would have never known it was Earthen Peak if not for the bonfire having the name Earthen Peak on it, and that seems like a missed opportunity when Dark Souls 3 tried so hard to pull the plots of the previous games, mainly Dark Souls 1, because apparently Dark Souls 2 is considered by some to be the black sheep of the bunch. And yeah, it does have problems. It did advance a lot of things. There are things it made better, and there are things it did badly. But it was a different design team, so again, take it with a grain of salt. I think it was a very well done game. I love that it gave us 4 rings. My only major complaint is that it too often relied on artificial difficulty through enemies in mobs, as opposed to, having actual harder enemies. And I'm fine with the occasional enemy mob, it's just that the whole game seemed like it was built around that. Not the whole game. You saw it more frequently in Dark Souls 2 than you did in Dark Souls 1 or 3. But the game designers really seemed to like the concept of enemies that come in swarms. And at times you would die just due to enemy placement being put in places to catch you off guard and basically jump scare you, as opposed to Dark Souls 1 always... The thing that annoys me when that happens, you don't get souls for the kill. I didn't see them appear anyway. Dark Souls 1 had been a bit more careful with its enemy placement and done things in such a way so that it was the whole idea of fair but difficult but fair. And Dark Souls 2 relied more on gank squads and shocking enemy placement for some of its difficulty. By gank squad, I mean when you put a large number of enemies, or where you have one visible enemy and a whole group of hidden enemies that are waiting for you to attack that visible enemy so that they can gank you. The Lost Bastille, or the prisonish area did that a fair bit. With the soldiers for that area. I kicked you. What you want to do about it? That, and some people didn't like that the optional bosses for the 3 DLCs were mainly designed to be done in co-op. Sorry, let me rephrase. 2 out of, well, no, yeah. All 3 of them, yeah. I was thinking for a second that one of them wasn't, but yeah, all 3 of them pretty much were. The path leading up to them, specifically. The fights themselves, aside from the 3, the ones in the poison area that were basically just a joke about the three main types of PvP players in Dark Souls 1. The Havel Roller, the Great Bow User, and the Katana guy. I mean, that was, I think it was Katana. But anyway, that was pretty funny, I admit. Dark Souls 2 really did do a lot more creatively with their invaders, too. With the NPC invaders. Especially in the DLC where you had ones that were coded to do specific quirky things, like the one hiding in the curse area, the one using camouflage. It was refreshing. I think Dark Souls 2 did have some of the better PvP of the group. Larger weapon and armor viability. Larger number of weapons and armor that were considered viable. And they, to me, did the NPC invaders better.
Ashen one for the length. Very well. Then taken.
Someday I'm gonna get that to 40.
Ashen one.
Dark Souls 3, to me, the problem it has... I've not played Bloodborne, so this is not a first-hand opinion, but from what I've heard from a friend of mine, if you're out there, hello, friend of mine mentioned that a lot of the Dark Souls 3's fast-paced nature was a bit of them trying to be more like Bloodborne. I mean, put simply. Did I not need... I didn't need as many souls as I thought I did. But yeah, the game wants to be more like Bloodborne, and the spam rolling is part of that. The fact that enemies are faster and more aggressive and all that. The problem to me is Bloodborne and Dark Souls are very different games. And again, I haven't played Bloodborne for myself, but I know Bloodborne is more about the fast-paced combat. Dark Souls wasn't as much about that, and I know there are people that love that in Bloodborne, and I know that there are people that love the basic Dark Souls combat style, and people that enjoyed the fusion of the two. I think they're separate enough that I do like the concept of the Bloodborne combat, and I like the concept of the Dark Souls combat. I just don't necessarily think that fusing them together ended with as good of a product as they had hoped. It doesn't feel as Dark Souls. You know, for me with a Great Shield, to have to rely on doing this in PvP, because PvP is basically spam rolling. I mean, there's the whole big meme about that. I think each game gets better in some ways, and other ways, that's part of innovation. You try new things, some of it's gonna work, some of it's not. You throw a bunch of stuff at the wall, the stuff that sticks, you keep that and carry it to the next game. The stuff that doesn't, well, you try it. You know, case in point, the 4 ring slots from Dark Souls 2. I think that was a brilliant idea, and I'm so glad it carried over. I love having the covenants on items that can be swapped out. I love having more item slots. I don't remember if that was Dark Souls 2 or 3 that started that, but you know, there are things that work. And then to me, if there was a Dark Souls 4, which I know last I checked there's no plans for it, I would hope that the spam rollish combat would be tuned back a bit in turn and put more for a Dark Souls combat, or have it so that the combat branches so that the people using light fast weapons can spam roll more while the people that are using slow heavy weapons or shields, tanks, etc. Lose that but gain something equally valuable so that you have, you know, a very varying combat. Woo. You don't look like what I thought you would. Hi. Why is your head in a cup? Is that the Lord vessel? Hi.
Bring Freide to me, please.
But she wants to kill me.
Canst thou not see the flame flickering once again? Soon will it surge. I can see it, feel it.
The world will rot without it. There's Freide. I wouldn't turn my back on that face.
Fret not, Father. We have no need of thy flail. 'Tis only the flame quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes.
Also, I've heard that she has a very annoying one-hit kill attack with that scythe. I'm gonna try it, but again, probably not gonna...
I will snuff out these ashes for good.
Probably not gonna beat her this episode. I'm gonna wait and see if I can learn some of her attacks. Also, she inflicts ice, frostbite, hence me equipping the chill bite ring. Because that's very useful in that it adds a good... And she teleports. Ah, she teleported in front of me. That was not expected. I need to see how much health she has, but I haven't gotten to land a hit yet. And there she goes. Ah. Okay, ma'am, am I gonna have to back you against a wall just to keep you from doing that? Not quite one hit, but still. Okay, I can see this is gonna be an annoying fight. I get she's predictable. I'm not yet making a statement on that. But the fact that she constantly runs away is obnoxious. Like, obnoxious is a nice term for this. But at least there's no ice damage, so she's dealing physical. I can block it. The main concern is just making sure that that I don't let frostbite build up. And she's staggerable, which is another good detail. Yeah, frostbite takes a while to undo. I know I'm wasting Estus's like nobody's business in this. There's a fun question. Is she actually teleporting or is she just becoming invisible? And if so, can I predict her new position based upon her initial position? But I really don't like the fact that she teleports. I mean, sorry, not teleport. The fact that she runs away and wants to keep that long range. It's very creative fighting style. I should... Go ahead, Linda.
Return from whence thou
Oh,
camest.
shut up.
That is thy place of belonging.
DLC designer, quit making enemies that yammer. Anyway. She just annoys me. I do think it's creative to have an enemy that, you know, has the big lunge attacks and then that backs away. Like, strategically speaking, it's very smart. I don't necessarily like it in a gameplay sense because of the fact that I end up wasting so much time trying to chase her around. And that her attacks themselves aren't hugely easy to punish. I may swap back to the butcher's knife though, because I generally have had some decent results with that when it comes to enemies that want to play that. But I will say, I'm glad she shuts up when you enter the fight. I'd far prefer an enemy to say something after I lose than every time I start. And her statement is short. It doesn't take her 20 seconds to finish it. That weird invader, whose name I can't remember, was the one that it was a problem because she just never shut up. It would, to me, benefit the game if during that, where she's stealthily skulking about, you had a means to actually develop an ear for telling where she's at, I guess. Yes, I'm sure if you had a 5.1 surround sound system, you could do all sorts of fun things with, oh, she's behind me, oh, she's in front of me, oh, she's here, oh, she's there. Adding footprints or little snow powder disturbances or something. But since she doesn't reliably appear in front of, behind, or to your side, that's different every time, I'm having trouble figuring out the pattern. The timing is also weird, because there's times I've rolled the moment she appears and made it out fine, and there's times that I've rolled as soon as she appears, and then she delays her attack and then hits me. I think it depends on how close to you she is. Like if she has to sweep towards you versus if she's right on top of you. Yeah, you better back off. See, what was there to make me feel like she was going to be in that direction? And that she was going to take her time lunging forward? What is there that I as the player could have seen, heard, or learned, as opposed to it being completely random? From a design stance, you want the player, you want fights to be kind of a dance where the player can learn and step and have that balance of when they die, it's because of something they did, and this attack just, to me, doesn't feel like that. It just feels like an, oh, which way, you know, where will she pop up from? I'm getting the timing down a little bit. I really don't like that move. It's rare enough I don't have a reflex for it. Like, you know, aside from when that happens. Dead. I just have issues with that.
Return from whence thou camest.
I knew that was going to end in death, but I've used so many Estises that, again, it's pointless. I'm going to swap weapons. I'm not getting to hit her often enough for me to really call the claws worth the extra speed I get versus the range that the Butcher's Blade will give me. Excuse me. And I know there's 2 other phases after this. It's partly what makes it annoying. Like, if I could look at it and say, oh, well, that's our only phase, you tend to glaze over quirks a bit more in those cases. Dark Souls 3 seems to just love its multi-phase bosses, which is a design trait that I find weird. Generally, a lot of games I've seen save multi-phase bosses for, like, big boss or, you know, extra special things. Dark Souls 3 just throws it around. I will say that Slave Knight Gale isn't technically a 3-phase boss, since it was all on 1 health bar, and he didn't change forms or really change styles each time. He just attacked a little bit harder. But it's a design trait that I'm not super fond of personally. I love for multi-phase bosses to be a rarity, something special. And I think that overusing them for every single boss, or the vast majority of bosses, it takes away what makes them special. It makes the single phase bosses stand out as the better. I'm trying to think of a good example. Well, generally, anytime you have something that a single boss does or rare bosses do versus all of them, it stands out more. Like Dark Souls 2, a lot of the bosses had a big, they curl up and then they put out kind of this big area of effect, get away from me thing. I called it the "you're hitting me too hard, I need some space" maneuver. Most bosses had one of those because they didn't want players to be able to just waylay, you know, jump on the boss and go to town, basically. Oh, much better. This move right here is just my biggest complaint about the fight. I don't feel like it's all that interesting or interactive, aside from roll as soon as you hear the sound of metal dragging. That seems to literally just be it. I know kind of where she's at. And see, that time it didn't do the metal dragging. It just, she went straight into the swipe. So to me, that seems like just a little too random of an attack on a purely design level. Unless I'm missing something, it just... Oh, don't you survive with a sliver. You coward. Nope. Die. That's what I should have thrown the first time. The sad part is, the first phase is easy. Second phase, mixed views, and the third phase is the one that's much maligned by people. Oh dear, he was chained down. I'll give you a 12 out of 10 just for this cutscene and the design of that boss. That is glorious. As long as the fire on the floor doesn't burn me, we're good. This cutscene by itself is just awesome. Ow, ow, what's hitting me? You back off, ma'am. Okay, will you hold still, sir? They share a health bar. He has much lower defense. If possible, pelt him with attacks and pay her no mind. When you do enough damage, she will dart off to a corner and begin trying to heal him.
Leave us be, Ashen One. Sweep all thought of us from thy
I
mind,
legitimately
as
took
they
damage from a
always
bowl
have.
sliding across a room. Half my health bar. I've been smacked by dragons and taken less damage than the legitimate of somebody sliding a desk around the room. It wasn't at high speed. I didn't expect to survive anyway, but design-wise, you really want to make sure that the damage you take from an attack matches the attack. Because the momentum carried by that object dragging, at worst, it would have damaged my leg. It would have knocked me around, but it would not have done that sufficient of damage when you compare it to other attacks that have done less damage. Anyway, I knew I was in for quite a fun time with this boss anyway, judging by the forum posts that I've tried to avoid. Let's just say that the title of many posts is Freide, expletive, some other negative term, boss in Dark Souls 3, or... I've seen a few people that love the Freide fight, and I do see interesting aspects, like that cutscene for the second phase is awesome. The second phase by itself, as long as she doesn't pull that stupid teleport move, looks like it's going to be great, aside from my quirk about the damage that you take from a bowl being slid slowly around. That just bothers me from a momentum velocity, momentum, inertia, whatever you want to call it. That shouldn't have hit me that hard. If nothing else, you should have the bowl on fire or something and then say, oh, well, the fire hurt you. I'd buy that. I don't buy... Dead. I'll look into the teleport thing. I'll, practice on it, play with it, and see if I can figure out a pattern to that. But the first phase, that's my main complaint. And the thing that's looming over me is the concern that, from what I've read, Phase 3 is just Phase 1 2.0. All the same attacks, just stronger, with more elements, faster, more reach, etc. And with that scythe attack becoming the one-hit kill that everybody seems to not want. There's a lot of complaints about that. I'm not looking forward to that. I'm gonna try. We'll see. I'd like to complete it because of the Slave Knight Gale thing. And supposedly you can summon Slave Knight Gale for this fight, and I do intend to try to do that. But I want to be able to reliably deal with Phase 1 first. And in this case, anyway, I'm going to go ahead and pause here, and we will continue this next week. So, see you next time.